Hey, nice one for clicking on. So my name's Paul, or artist name Pablo Eyes, much more interesting than Paul. And in this video, I'm going to break down how I made a sample as part of the Brighter Sound project under the theme of Transform. So as a hip hop head, Transform's just part of the deal, sampling directly or replaying stuff. And I've created a sample which I've uploaded. So if some of you are following the Brighter Sound social media channels, or if you follow any of my pages and you haven't done your sample flip yet, submit. It'd be great to hear what you do with it. Let's just share what we're all doing with each other, all right? But if you haven't, and you maybe want to think about how this all came about, I'm going to break down how I made the original sample step by step. And then maybe you can do the same too, or it may just give you a nudge to think, do you know what? I'm going to submit my sample flip as well. So I hope you find this breakdown interesting and enjoyable to watch. The inspiration for this sample was the composer Galt MacDermot, which has been sampled so much in hip hop. I mean, Oh No, Madlib's brother did a whole album just sampling his stuff exclusively. But how I came across him was early 90s when I first got into hip hop, as the producer sampled one of his records to make the tune Woo-Ha by Busta Rhymes. And really I like his style because it's jazzy, so it's got those interesting chord movements, but it's got a lot of calypso rhythms in a lot of his music. And with putting together this sample, I wanted to create the stem so people have access to that, so they're not just accessing just the tune as it is, they can really manipulate it so it gives ultimate flexibility. And I think with that, it just makes it more interesting. You have the benefit of using original source material as well as the flexibility, as opposed to just sampling off a record or YouTube digging, and pretty much what you hear is what is, you know, you'd think, oh, I just want that guitar part, but you can't. But with the stems, you can access all of those parts. So that was a key part of what I wanted to do with this. And here's the piano part. So what I'll do, I'll play through the main loop first and put the chords up on the screen. So for the piano players out there, you can give it a go. I'm definitely not one of those proper keys players. Lots of takes to get to this, and the piano roll was my friend to adjust notes, to get the timing, get the notes right, and using my ear just to get the right movement. So it was quite a bit of work for me to get to this point. I'll play through so you can hear it, and then I'll break down my processing afterwards. So that's the part. Just breaking it down a bit further. So you'll see there's two tracks here, mainly the chords and the piano melody. My original idea was for the piano melody part, I was going to play that on a different instrument, maybe play it on guitar, or maybe ask somebody else that I know who can play sax or some other melodic instrument to do that. But in the end, I thought keeping it as just the piano works well, and I like the sound of it. So there's two tracks here, and I'm quite a big fan of track stacks in Logic just to keep my files organized. So that's what I've done there. But in terms of the processing, there's not that much to it. Again, I'm going to bring up the old Trustful RC20, and with that, I tweaked one of the initial presets here, VHS. So with that, I just turned down the wobble effect a bit and really turned the distortion up. So if I take RC20 off, you can hear the piano without it. And now with it on. Just gives it that extra bit of distortion and a little bit of tremolo, just to give it a bit more character and to make it sound less digital and exact. That's what really gave the piano its character. EQ, I put EQ on here, but actually in the end I didn't end up doing anything, so there is no EQ, so it pretty much was as it is. And the actual piano preset used, I used the Komplete Controller suite of sounds, and I didn't tweak this preset at all, so it's just the Upright Wonderkind preset on the upright piano for those people which use Komplete Native Instruments plugins, and that's the piano part. So for me, there's two main parts to this bass line which really make it work with a sample. The first part is how it changes from more of a ambiguous, sort of more of intriguing sort of line going with the jazzier chords, to then when it goes to more of the straight ahead groove, how it's a lot more solid and bossa. So the first bit, how there's just lots of long notes just going with the chords. Into the bossa bit. That's one part, and the second part is just all the little subtle ghost notes in between. So here, and second half, and into the bossa bit, two ghost notes there. Really just helps the groove, all of those subtle little details. Those are some of the things in mind when I was creating the bass line. For the percussion, I just used the sample by this amazing producer that I found on Twitter called RT Hinkle, part of his mailing list. So this was part of one of his free sample packs. Highly recommend checking him out. The sound of his samples sonically are absolutely superb. He's definitely invested in some gear to get a great setup. So with the claps, it was just one of the stems from one of his samples. And what's really interesting about it is that when you listen on your headphones, you can hear the claps alternating from left to right. So in the sample, I like that sense of movement, and just the reverb as well just gives it a real sense of space. It sounds like a springy sort of like plate kind of reverb, and I didn't add too much more to it just because it sounded great as it is, and I feel like the rhythm that's played makes it feel faster than the tune actually is, and I quite like that rhythmic feel within the sample. So this is how the whistling part of the sample came about. So here it is as you hear it. So that's the part, and without any processing, this is what it sounds like. So breaking that down bit by bit, the first part was just giving it some EQ, a high pass filter just to get rid of all of those breaths you heard, and then EQ'd it, a bit of a boost around 1K to give it a bit more presence. And then after sorting out some of those tonal issues, just to give it a bit of character. So if this just brought out the trusty RC20, and what's really prominent in my settings here, just to give the whistling its feel, is the wobble effect, in that it gives it a bit of vibrato in the whistling, and then there's a bit of distortion as well, which just makes it sound less clean and just gives it a little bit of extra grit. After that, compressing it slightly, just to really even it out, because there was quite a lot of spikes. Just really just to smoothen out those transients. And then I put another reverb on there. There's a reverb within RC20, but I put another reverb within here, the tabla plate, and the way I EQ'd the reverb was, again, removing the low end, the high pass filter, but actually removing a bit of the high end as well, so you just get more of the lower mids. And without that reverb, it sounds like this. And with the reverb, and that's all the processing on the track. For me, that last bit of reverb just helped to push it into the background, so it did kind of mold into the sample and didn't stick out too much. And that's how that part was made. And that's how I made the sample. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. Follow some of the other links so you can hear the beat that I made with it, if you fancy checking that out. And just another reminder, if you're thinking about submitting a sample flip, then please do. The more people that can upload, the better. It's just really cool to check out what other people think, and just selfishly how you've interpreted what sort of like fell out of my head. It'd be a pretty cool experiment. So it's been really cool showing you this breakdown, and I look forward to listening to more of the flips through the Brighter Sound channels and through mine. So take care and keep creating.